Hello, you. It's me. And I just wanted to jump on because well, I'll throw out a little bit of my background. And I've gone to drag shows. I enjoy drag queens. And I am definitely supportive of the trans community. And I was a little bit disturbed by things that I've been hearing from the trans community, as well as from the conservative community, which I feel I'm also a part of. While I talk about this, I just thought I'd show some of these little Pokemon figures that I collected once a long time ago. So at least it's movement, it's something that's happening while I try to gather my thoughts on this. And the reason that I was concerned is because I was watching a video by Trixie Matel, and she was talking about how trans people aren't dangerous, and that shows, or not drag shows specifically, but more like drag show reading time that they have at libraries and stuff, that these kids aren't getting hurt. There's nothing wrong with them just because they're reading stories in a gown. It doesn't mean that they're dangerous. And I agree with her. And I say her because I'm talking about Trixie Matel, not Brian. I agree with her to a large extent. Yes, drag queens aren't dangerous people. They're just not. But, and I'm not a professional commentary person, so I don't have receipts. I'd like to get receipts. I usually like to be very, very on top of these things, but I am not currently, and I apologize for that. So I can only go by hearsay, things that I've heard on news outlets and so forth. But I do recall they were talking about a library that had the drag queen reading to children thing. They were doing it regularly, and I think they had something like eight drag queen ladies who were reading to the children, and that is fine. No problem with that. The problem that I do have, and that a lot of people had, is that out of the 8 that were reading to children, out of the 8 drag queens that were reading to children, 4 or 5 of them were convicted child predators. Convicted. Now, is this because they're drag queens? No. It's not because they're drag queens. It's because they're criminals posing as drag queens. And I think that's where we need to make the distinction. The problem is, this is a real thing that happened. Convicted child predators, harmers, bad people who are pretending to be drag queens, who could have potentially harmed the children. And again, not the fault of drag queens. It's really the fault of the library for not doing some kind of a background check on the people that are reading to kids. And I think that's where the big distinction needs to be. Drag queens are not predators. There are criminals who are posing as drag queens. But I think the conservative side doesn't always make that distinction, and that's where the problem lies. But this was a real thing that happened, and that needs to be addressed. It's not just a bunch of people being scared and making stuff up. I mean, it is to some degree, but this really happened. and it's very troublesome, and that needs to be addressed. If you're going to be a person that's reading to children in a library, then library, maybe, just do a quick check and make sure these people are okay and not criminals. That's all I'm saying. It doesn't have anything to do, like I said, with being a drag queen, but they used that persona of being a drag queen as a criminal to potentially do more crimes, if you see what I'm saying. And that's bad. And that's why we need to make some more maybe rules and regulations, like, hey, do a quick $10 background check on people before they're around children. I mean, I would think that's a good idea regardless, whether you're a library or a school or whatever you are. Do a background check. Make sure that these people are good people and not criminals and not people that want to hurt other people or children. So that's that with that. Now, regarding the wonderful podcast that Roly and Luxeria do together, I enjoy them fully. I think they're great. Roly does a lot with tattoos, and I love that. I don't have any tattoos myself, but I've always been fascinated with them. And so there's that. And plus, he's just funny. And then Luxeria, who I very much enjoy. I love watching her do the do all the reality shows. I think it's great. I think she's fantastic. I think she's a beautiful woman, and I love her. I just want to establish that ahead of time. Now, they were talking about the trans side of things, and they were saying that trans people are not going into bathrooms and harming people. Trans people just want to go in, use the bathroom, would touch up their makeup, do whatever, and leave. And that is correct. That is correct. I've been in a woman's bathroom myself, and I noticed a person who I would have suspected could be trans. I don't know. But what did she do? She went in, used the facilities, washed her hand, touched up her lipstick, and then left. Because that's what, she's just a normal person. And that's what normal people do. But what they did not address is they say, oh, well, trans people don't want to harm people. I believe that's true. Trans people don't want to harm people. They just want to go in, do what human beings do, and then leave. The problem is criminals posing as a trans person and trying to do harm. And this has happened a few different times. One in particular that I can recall, where a guy posing as a trans woman, not well, by the way, he just threw on a wig and carried a purse or something. I mean, obviously he was a criminal. He went into a female bathroom and started asking little girls that were in the bathroom nasty, gross questions. This actually happened. And there was another instance where a gentleman posing as a trans person went into a spa, I think, something like that. It was a spa, went into the female locker room and was walking around without any clothes on, flashing some little 12-year-old girls. And again, these are criminals and they're disgusting. And we need to make that distinction. A trans person is fine. But these are criminals that are posing as trans people in order to get away with their disgusting, gross shit. And I think, again, there's a distinction that needs to be made. And I think it would be very nice for somebody like Trixie Matel, who's very famous and lovely, and like Roly and Luxeria, who to me they're famous and lovely. It would be nice for them to stand up and not say, "Oh well, drag queens are great. Don't make all this legislation because of drag queens, because they're fantastic." Because I think we need to see that distinction being made by them as well. Criminals are posing as drag queens. Criminals are posing as transgendered individuals, and they're harming people. And we need to stand up and say, it's not the drag queens, it's not the transgendered people, it's criminals pretending to be something they aren't and trying to harm people. The problem is these things have actually happened. So to say, oh, that would never happen, that's not how things go. Most people know. Most trans individuals are not going into a bathroom and staring at children. Okay? Most drag queens are not reading a story to kids and thinking about bad criminal things, bad criminal behavior. That's not most. That's, like I said, criminals pretending to be those things. We need to fight against the criminals who are posing, not the people themselves. Trans individuals are fine people, like everybody else. There's good, there's bad. But we're talking about criminals who do bad things. And we need to set up some type of legislation to prevent criminals from harming children. Not drag queens, not trans people, criminals. We need to make that distinction. And if somebody like Trixie Matel, Roly, Luxeria, if they could get together and say, hey, look, we are not the threat. It's the criminals posing like us that are the threat. And we need to do something about that. I think the worlds could merge together better. I think that, and I can't speak for all conservative people. I consider myself a conservative liberal. But I think that if we can all stand together and make these kind of distinctions, then I think we can make better laws that do in fact protect the children and do not harm people who are just expressing themselves in the way that they want to. You know, I think that that would be a really great thing if we can make laws to protect people. And it would be protecting drag queens and trans people as well. They need to be protected. But we need to make laws to get rid of the criminals and put them where they belong. Because harming anybody is bad, but harming children is the worst thing that can happen. Anyway, I don't know if anyone will watch this video, but I hope something that I've said resonates with you, and I hope we can fight this fight to fight the criminals and not harm people that don't deserve it. Anyway, that's all I got to say.